Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. As a special treat for October and to celebrate season 3 of WitchLit, I've partnered with my Southern California cousin, Kelly Lane, to tell you about her new creative endeavor, Wily Women Body Care. From the website, life is complicated and messy and wonderful. Amazing women whose life stories are traced on their skin stand as our inspiration. Their scars mingle with wrinkles etched deeper for the heartache of loss. And yet they sing, they paint, they write poetry, and they love deeply. I'm Kelly Lane. My story is also complicated and messy and wonderful. I celebrate my ancestors in this collection and formulate for the skincare challenges facing my family and yours. They are hardworking formulas punctuated with grace and beauty. Wily Women Body Care is committed to helping you achieve and maintain healthier skin. Our goal is to bring you ritual-worthy products made from responsibly sourced natural ingredients packaged in beautiful reusable bottles with stone labels. Give yourself the gift of healthier skin. Our Eva Quill skincare line is produced in small batches from carefully selected ingredients with loving intention. We apply the same standards in our ingredient selection for our formulas as we do in preparing celebratory meals for loved ones and choosing items for our personal altars. Simple, natural, powerful. I've been using Eva Quill's Crone Oil for the dry skin I've acquired since my move from always humid East Tennessee to the dry Santa Clara Valley in California, along with the fossilized amber anointing balm for centering before meditation and magical work. The scent is ancient, and it also brings up all those early 90s witchy feelings from going to your first witchy shop. WitchLit listeners will receive 1 milliliter anointing oil blend for Samhain and a 1 milliliter giant Mexican marigold essential oil for the Day of the Dead with each purchase, along with a 20% discount through October 31st with coupon code WitchLit20 at wilywomen.com. All the details are in the show notes. Heron Michelle is a mom, shopkeeper, modern witch, and priestess. Originally from South Carolina, she is an alumna of the Fine Arts Center High School with focus in creative writing and holds a BS from East Carolina University. Heron is the owner of the Sojourner Earth Provisions, a metaphysical shop in Uptown Greenville. She is also a Reiki master, tarot card diviner, and clairvoyant specializing in past life retrieval. Since 2010, she's taught a unique training program in modern witchcraft through the shop. From that classroom emerged the Sojo Circle, a coven of independent witches for whom she served as co-founding high priestess. She writes the blog Witch on Fire at Patheos Pagan and regularly lectures at local universities, festivals, and conferences. Her book, Elemental Witchcraft, was published in December 2021 by Llewellyn. Heron Michelle, welcome to WitchLit.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited you're here, and I'm glad you made it work while you're traveling. So
no problem.
And people, unfortunately, we're not going to see this beautiful background of it looks like petite cloth behind you, too.
Yeah. Well, we are in our van with, van life, RV,
yes.
traveling, and, the occasional strong thrown over the not so aesthetic bits of the van is helpful.
Yes, not all van life is Instagram ready.
Indeed.
Well, great. So our first question for everyone on the show is why write in this age of Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of stuff? Why write?
I think that is a very good question. And it has been hard lately to get back to writing for me, if I'm honest. I've been considering this question, and it's been a minute since I've done any writing significant writing since the book came out. At first, I thought I was just burned out a little bit from all, the year-long editing process and, the obsession and the compulsion that kind of comes with writing for me, because that's the kind of writer I am. I wish I could say I'm one of those disciplined people that just does it like a discipline, but it's really more of a surge of hyper communication that must come out like a geyser. and it's going to come out and it will flow as words. And if I don't let the words come out and put them together, then it's like a haunting or something. And so it's almost it's almost obsessive at the time until the flow stops, and then I just sort of drop from exhaustion and switch to something else for a little while I recover, actually. And I don't know. But why write in this age when everyone else is doing video? And it's interesting how I also have been struggling to get back to the written word, because I wonder if anyone will even read it. Is anyone paying attention to blogs anymore? Or do we want our videos, our content served up in 30-second videos on TikTok, which I don't do? So yeah. It's a good question. I don't know that I can ever stop entirely writing. But I think art is created to be shared and received. You project it out there, and you want it to be received by somebody, somewhere, by an audience. And if you really truly doubt that anyone will ever see it, it's hard to push it out there for me, because the push is so difficult. This is a bit of a struggle for me, the push. I don't mean the writing it, but the pushing it out there, the preparing it for public consumption, especially with the online mediums like blogging, the formatting and the pictures and the tagging and the SEO, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of extra work if you don't think anybody's going to look. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really behind on my blog, and I'm behind even on my next manuscript, which is due November 1st. And I must get back to it, but I'm starting to feel the tides turn back to the written word for me again. So why write? I don't know. I don't think I have a choice.
I think that's a consistent answer. I think what you said about, this idea that a lot of writers have this, I write every day and it's a discipline. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've talked to people who do that, but it seems like a lot of people, it's really a lot more episodic for people. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's probably closer to a truism.
Yeah, for me it is.
Writing every day.
I journal, more like a diary for myself a couple times a week. I'll get to it, depending on the time frame. But that's not for public consumption. That's just for me. Yeah. So I don't know. I've never been disciplined in that way. Even when I was in creative writing school and it was like for a grade, it was just pulling teeth to get me to sit down. And, like we're camping up here in Wyoming with someone who's a poet. And he says that every single day he goes for a ride on his mountain bike. And then he comes back and he writes a poem about it every single day as a discipline. And I'm just in awe of that. I have never been that person. Yeah.
Yeah. That is definitely a discipline. That is definitely discipline, the way he does it.
Poetry comes in is like a struck inspiration kind of thing. I've never been, I guess if I'm in school and I have to do an assignment, I guess I could pull some teeth and make it happen. But for the most part, I find that sort of thing is just, an inspiration that strikes, and then it surges its way to the surface. And then, I sort of obsessively polish that, and then I'm done with it and I walk away, and then I wait for the next strike. But I do a lot of different art forms. I'm also a graphic artist. And, I've gone through phases where I'm really into physical things like dancing. I danced for the belly dance troupe for a while. A lot of different graphic media. My background in school was in interior design, which is a very practical applied form of kind of a feng shui, how to create a space that is psychologically and, practically effective. That was a thing for a while. And then when I put it down, I put it completely down, walked away. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things, and I cycled through. Yeah. The thing I liked best about the book, my first book here, Elemental Witchcraft, is that the art department liked my sketches for my ideas for graphics, which I assumed they'd hire proper artists to do for me. And they liked some of my own stuff. So they asked me to do some. So some of that is my own graphic art, and others of them, the Llewellyn art department redid, and some Nikki Muller did, which was lovely. But it did get me back into the sort of, I can do the graphic thing with my writing. And that was happy for me too.
That's cool. So since we kind of brushed that topic, and you've gone through the whole process of publishing from, contract to writing it to publishing to this kind of, I always think of like the anticlimactic aftermath of the book actually coming out. Like,
boy, you're not wrong.
Yeah. What was that process like for you?
I found the whole process to be a lot like pregnancy and childbirth, which were not easy for me. Joyful in many ways, but not easy. Very painful processes. I started writing a whole different book for Llewellyn, and I wrote for a whole year on a different contract. They wanted a book on the moon, and I pitched what I wanted to write in a 3-book series. One part of that being about the moon witchcraft, lunar witchcraft. And I tried for a whole year to write that manuscript, but there needed to be so much preamble. Like, okay, that doesn't make sense until I explain this, that it ended up being way over long on the preamble before I even got to the moon. And finally, after a year, I cried uncle and just said, look, I need to write this other book. I need to switch the order of the volumes. Elemental needs to come first. So I repitched the whole thing. They accepted that. They sent me a new contract for a different subject. And then I started tearing apart the original manuscript to what needed to go in the first volume. So to me, it had been like putting together a quilt. And then I ripped out the stitches and yanked huge blocks out and little patches here and there out. And then it took another year to get the in 2 or 3 drafts to get the Elemental Witchcraft, honed enough. I learned a lot about how to write a long nonfiction piece from my editor, Heather Green at Llewellyn. I had never written in long form before, ever. Poetry, creative essays, articles, more journalism kind of thing, sure. Short stories, yeah, but never anything this long. And she was very helpful in getting me honed. It took a whole nother round. Like, I think normally with Llewellyn, there's 2 drafts and then they send to production and then you come back to copy editing later. I had to do 3 full drafts just to get it right. And I'm very grateful to them for allowing me that extra step in the process, but it took a long time.
Yeah. And that's a lot of editing time.
It's a lot of editing time. So from the very first, hey, here's a contract, to a book coming out was 3 years for me. And it was awesome. I mean, it's great. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining, but I'm one of those artists that suffers a bit for the craft. I think it goes to and since I'll just mention this because I know that it's a common thing among at least people I know. I was just in my 40s diagnosed as ADHD, and I never knew that was me because in women it looks so different than in men. But my H is hyper communication, hyper emoting, hyper expression. It's like it's almost, a totally spaz kind of, I have to express this thing to you right now in some way, which is why I sort of bounce back and forth between art and craft forms. And when I'm in the zone, like most ADHD people, I can't sleep. I don't eat unless somebody reminds me. It's my physical form just dilapidates while I'm in this creative surge. And I'm not very pleasant to be around at that time. So my poor family. But so I think that was an interesting part of the process was, getting in the zone. And when you're writing an article and it's 2,500 words, the zone, relieves after like a day or two. But when it's 142,000 words, you're down in it for a long time.
Yeah.
And it can be physically arduous. Eat, breathe, sleep, meditate on this stuff. And plus it's magic that I'm writing about, right? And I'm creating these guided journeys to alternate dimensions, basically. And so while I am writing and honing them, I am on the journey. I am doing it.
Yeah.
That's a lot of time to be spent in a kind of clairvoyant trance.
I was going to ask you about that because, 2 things. One, can you talk a little bit about the structure of the book? Because I think for such a big work that, there's a lot going on to get to where the book is actually going. Like, I wouldn't say it's preamble. It's more foundational, I think.
Yeah,
reading the front.
It's
not really preamble. It's foundational to get to kind of the elemental workings closer to the end. But yeah, let's talk about that first.
Sure. So the structure, it's kind of a textbook or guidebook to a journey. And then it is the map and the directions and the guided, like you're going on a long foot journey and you hire a Sherpa or somebody to guide the way and give you the lay of the land a little bit. So I wrote it like I'm on the journey with everyone, as the same way I would in my classroom. I wanted it to feel the same as in my classroom, which I had done for 10 years. And all of this was developed in the classroom, though I will say that when I put it in the book form, it ended up with a new structure. So this has never been taught like this exactly before, because normally we would be doing all 3 proposed volumes at once. We are celebrating the Sabbats and the sun, we're celebrating the moon, and we're doing the elemental work, and we're teaching the history and the foundation. So really all 3 volumes at one time would be what my normal year-round classroom looked like. So by pulling out the one piece, it did take a new structure. Anyway, so section 1 is like history, just general introduction and definitions of what I mean by modern witchcraft and neo-paganism, the kind of modern witchcraft that I am presenting, because every book is different. Every person's opinion is different. Their path is different. And when a reader is going to get into a practice, they need to know what they're getting into, right? They need to know what kind of thing they're getting. So, that's defined. Also, I feel like because I didn't realize my way of doing things was so different until my editors would respond back and they go, wait, you're speaking about this stuff as if the reader already knows. You can't assume the reader already knows these things the way you think they know them, because it's so unique. And I'm like, is it so unique? Isn't it just like other witchcraft books? And I guess the answer from their very broad perspective was no, it is not. You cannot assume anything. And you have to introduce your ways. So, you include things like ethics and, the paradigm. Where's all this coming from? So my book is based in Hermetics, the Hermetic philosophies, Hermetic occultism, which is the underpinning of Wicca and a lot of things. So it's based in astrology and in alchemy, those types of Western esoteric philosophies and occultism. So, defining all of that is important. I don't like superstitious ways of doing things, just do it because you should do it. There is a reason why we do these things. And until you tell someone the reason, the underpinnings of why, it's just superstition. It's based on faith or something. It's based on, or fear or superstition. And I don't care for that very much. So they say, write the book you wish you had. I wish I had the books that explain to me the why and the depth of the why and how it works up front. And so that's what I provided. So section 1 is basically the foundation. Section 2 gets into foundation and historical underpinnings of elemental witchcraft in specific, as well as an introduction to outer witchcraft practices, the things like casting a circle and opening the gateway to an elemental quarter, how to create and consecrate an altar, how to hallow the space, all of the functional outer practice things that go with an elemental witchcraft practice. I went ahead and just introduced those like someone's never done this before. But also I have discovered that our coven's way of doing these things that we developed over time together have some very nice, unique characteristics that I don't see in any other circles when I go visit other groups. And so hopefully, even if someone's been practicing witchcraft a long time, they'll find a couple nuggets of technique that maybe sparks them. I don't know. So we get through all that and then how to prepare. for the year and a day work, because a Hermetic practice is based in the great work of magic, which is a whole year long cycle, which continues in a deeper fashion every year for your whole life, as like the goal of life being to evolve yourself and your practice. So section 3 is key to the wheel of the year, and it is it's a year-long magical working, and it goes exercise by exercise, thing to think about, journal entry, thought, like a thought experiment. There's a bunch of exercises which are just thought experiments. There's but then there's magical herbalism crafting for each element according to the phases of the moon. Mm-hmm. Then there's a ritual journey, a very formalized ritual journey to go to the elemental realm that you're working with at the time, make the introductions with the sovereigns of that elemental realm and the beings in that realm, etc., to retrieve information for your own practice, like your elemental tool that you might want to be working with to anchor that energy in your practice, or in some cases, like what stone, what crystal might best heal me at this time or help to bring me balance, or which plant medicine might help me, or which spirit animal medicine might help me. Different things, or is there an ancestor who's working with me right now? So each journey retrieves that information. And then the whole thing I call the pinnacle path, because each stroke of that journey from each elemental lesson helps to balance that element within yourself. I call it the fivefold self, as if we are at least 5 layers of a multiform being at the minimum. And then, so that brings balance, but also it helps us to reconcile some of the paradoxes of existence between the spiritual nature of ourselves and the material nature of ourselves. And hopefully by the end of the year in the great work, one is more balanced, more happy, more effective, more healthy, both mentally, both multiform way, mentally, emotionally, in our will, our free will, our physical body's health, our spiritual health. Mm-hmm. And so that's the wheel of the year. And then in this case, with spirit, the 5th, that doesn't necessarily go perfectly into a wheel, but it's ongoing. Mm-hmm. And so the last chapter is, ideas of working with spirit as goddess and God, and all the range between, and balancing that within yourself in the coming year using lunar and solar cycles.
Yeah. Like I said, we talked a little bit before, and it was like, it is a big book. It's a big book. All of that is in there. And it was really interesting to read through it, because when I had first gotten it, I kind of skimmed through and I was like, almost like, where is the elemental part of this? Because when you're first reading it, it is a lot of history. And when I got into reading, I was like, oh, this is really different. This is a really different approach. I mean, I do think, every year we kind of get from, pagan publishers, and now, more traditional publishers are publishing witchy books because it's trendy. We get a lot of these 101 kind of books. But I think you're right. And I think your editors are right, probably because they're also in this business. And I haven't read nearly as widely as they have, but this book felt very different for that.
Thank you.
Have that underpinning of like, this is not, kind of like you said, this is not just, this is how we do it, but this is why. This is the history of this. This is where it comes from. These are the pieces we can take forward with us. And these are the things maybe we should leave behind. Because I think that conversation about duality and how limiting that is when people make it, when they kind of lay that overlay on like human gender and sexuality ideas, and it's like, no, that's not what this means. Let's leave that in the past. Yeah, that can go in the trash, and let's move forward and talk about it in this other way.
You've really pinpointed the thing that I thought was going to be most controversial. And I'm yet so far not had anybody get up in my face and argue with me about my interpretations of Hermetic ideas. I have no use for dualism. I don't think Hermeticism was ever supposed to be dualistic. Mm-hmm. When we talk about polarity is a range, and but not everyone interprets it that way. They see the two ends of the poles, right, and they go, "Oh, that's the dual nature of the thing." So yeah, that's the part where I'm like, I think those interpretations which have become somewhere in the middle from their introduction to now. I think the interpretations that that never served us or were never completely accurate, but it's like a little fossil from some old fashioned patriarchal moment in our history. I mean, that's a fossil, and it's a relic of another era, and our understanding has evolved, same as divinity has evolved.
Right.
And I work very closely with my divine guides, and I find that very strange to say. I find it difficult to talk about this and not sound like a lunatic. I think for our witchy audience, community, market that this book was for, hopefully they will understand. But I really do work very closely with gods, with spirit, and we communicate in a way that sometimes it's just an everyday prayer back and forth. I feel like I'm in a constant divine conversation. And then other times, the times that are very poignant, that have turned my life completely, it's like the river's flowing and all of a sudden this boulder is thrown down and I am diverted in another direction, and it is just life altering. Those are more like visions or something. But this book is the fulfillment of a commission to me from the god Hermes and the goddess Aphrodite. You need to write this, and this is what we need you to say. And these are the lessons that we need to be conveyed. And I've been working with them for years on trying to figure that out with my little limited human mind. And they've been helping me to understand it and put it into context in a modern, I'm just a regular old lady living a life here in the middle world, raising her kids and trying to survive, and so mostly what I've been trying to do is create a path of witchcraft that not only stands firmly on a very solid historical foundation. It's not some brand new wild idea. These are ancient ideas, revisited. I like to pull the veil of the patriarchy off of it, and like you said, let go of some things that never served us very well. But then I really wanted to create a path of witchcraft that serves our future, that actually will help make a difference in the future. I have no interest in regurgitating or just grinding the old griststone from the past over and over and over and over again, because I don't live in the past and that world doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But that we are creating a future world that is that needs a different way. Everyone says smash the patriarchy, And I'm one of those feminists that's like, no, smashing, that's just more domination. And I try not to, in the book, you may have noticed, I try not to use patriarchy and matriarchy so much as because it gets an unhelpful bitterness in your mouth about gender and sex, which isn't necessary.
Right.
Because it's about your approach to power. A woman who's using dominator bully tactics is a bully of the patriarchy, right? It doesn't matter what sex you are; it's your approach to power and how you use that. So, to me, I like to use the old anthropological terms of a dominator culture versus a cooperator or partnership culture. And I think witchcraft has been here all along to restore. It was supposed to be restoring a cooperator culture, which is a partnership. There's no chosen people. There's no a greater sex. There's no, it's supposed to be about cooperation and building everybody up into their sovereignty with their uniqueness and their diversity and what the weirder we are, the more unique we are, the more distinct we are. That brings something beautiful to the collective cooperative culture. And so I think that should be fostered. And I think witchcraft does a good job of that, bringing us all into our sovereignty. But then how do we work together?
Yeah.
So So that's the whole goal of the book, the whole thesis of the book. I mean, all that introduction, all that history, all the techniques, all that stuff was just to get us to how do we create a witchcraft practice personally, and then that which we share with other people beyond that, that will help us create a better future where we can actually be happy and healthy and effective and enjoy this middle world. I don't find it very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Not in every way.
Yeah.
I love your cat behind you on your chair, by the way.
Yeah, he's our podcat. He likes to sit behind me when I do interviews. and show off his lovely coat when he does that. For those who can't see, he's standing up on the back of my chair. So,
and he's beautiful.
He is a good boy. He's 14. I can't believe he's been around that long. I was thinking about what you said about that kind of like talking about these things and not feeling, like people are like, what is this crazy person kind of stuff? I mean, raised in a materialistic culture that tells you that these things are not real, like I have that skepticism kind of button in my heart too. But I think, like you said, like we're talking about the river of your life and things getting so aggressively diverted by things that you can't really deny. I think those personal experiences, it's really hard to be skeptic in the face of awe. Like it's really hard to be skeptic in those moments.
And I'm one of those skeptical people. I was raised in the Southern Baptist church, and then my mom went. That wasn't crazy enough. She had to go into the evangelical sort of Church of God, Assemblies of God, like singing and dancing and falling out and speaking in tongues kind of churches later on. And I mean, I have such a healthy skepticism, people start talking about this stuff and I'm like, I don't know. So I do apply that to all my own stuff too, but there are some things in my life when I was at my most despairing. And that's the other thing that goes with the ADHD in women. It so often gets confused for depression and anxiety because those are, what do you call it? Conditions or symptoms of the other things. Mm-hmm. So I suffered from depression very deeply as a child. And during one of my darkest, most bleak, almost this close to suicidal kind of moments as a young person, as I was leaving my mother's church, it's very hard to break from your mother's paradigm because you don't know any better. I'm like 13 or 14 and I'm like, well, that can't be true. I just don't accept anything they just said because they were very pray away the gay kind of horrible people. Women belong in the kitchen and pregnant and they should never be clergy. They were sexist, they were racist, they were homophobes, they were the worst. And they're trying to tell me that God ordains such things. And what do I know? Anyway, I'm like, well, nope, that can't be true. But all I know is the God versus Satan world that they have, the dualism, the good versus evil. There's only good or evil. There's no gray. That's why I have no room for dualism.
Yeah.
my paradigm, I just never felt right. But anyway, so I'm trying to break away from that. And I'm like, well, I can't believe that this God, Jesus, whatever. And mind you, it was just their interpretation. I've come to terms with that now. I was rejecting their view of it. I said, but that can't be true. And if they say that the only thing beyond that is the devil and hell or oblivion or whatever or nothing, I was like, well, I guess I'll just have to accept that because I refuse to participate with this other hatefulness. And then I thought, but if there is no divinity, if there is nothing beyond just this material world and then your worm food, well, that's the most depressing thing I have ever heard, right? And I just felt so bleak and desperate and desolate. And in my acceptance of this desolation, I lost all hope. And then I said, there's no God. That's it. It's done. There's no point to life. And I had one of those religious experiences that's just cannot be denied. I mentioned it very briefly in the introduction without all the gory details, but gory, all the delicious details, some of it I didn't put in there, but let's just say that I had the kind of experience where I feel like divinity came into the room, was in the room, the gravity, the weight, the spiritual ecstasy, the terror, the orgasm, the whole weight. And it was like this, it was paralyzing. It was euphoric. It was amazing. It scared the shit out of me. I'm 13. And as far as I know, Yahweh just walked in the door. I mean, like, I don't know, but it came with the moon. It was a full moon that night, and it had been bright in the room, and it felt like the entirety of the moon. I thought the whole moon had walked in, had come into the room. And I just heard this amazing chorus of affirmation that there is divinity. There is a purpose. Wake up and pay attention. It's right here in front of you. Open your eyes, kid. There's a job to be done. And I was like, okay. I accept this. And as soon as I accepted that it was happening, it all went away. And I'm just left panting and sweating and freaked out. And I'm laying in the bed, and I sit up, and I'm like feeling the bed and my legs. And I'm looking around the room and out the window, and I talked myself out of it. For about 5 minutes, I was like, after my heart rate went down, I was like, that did not just happen. That did not just happen. That was a dream. I must have fallen asleep. And now I'm awake, and that did not just happen. And so I lay back down and I go, that's it. Nope. And then it repeated. Holy shit, it repeated. The whole thing happened again, only like twice as strong. And this time I heard a chorus of actual words, and, but the other had been ideas. This was like, I heard an external chorus of voices, all voices. It wasn't one voice. And then I was given a guided tour, this like vision of things, which I don't want to get into. I didn't get into it in the book either.
Yeah.
But it became a clairvoyant vision of what my job was, what I was here to do. Because the question had been originally was, there's no point to life. I should just snuff out now.
Yeah.
And I was given the answer to, but unfortunately, because it wasn't in so much like English, like, hey, you're going to go to college and get a degree in religion, and then you're going to write a book. I mean, it wasn't quite like that, right?
Right.
I didn't interpret it properly. And coming from the Christian church, I thought I had been called to Christian ministry. And I was like, no, I refuse. And at the time, I'm like 13 or 14. And the only way I know to get out of being a Christian person, missionary person, is to disqualify myself with lots of fun sin, lots and lots of misbehaving. And so I went on this, I started this journey, about the time you start high school. I wanted to read the banned books. I wanted to read the things they say don't look at, like the Apocrypha in the Bible, the books they say you are not canonical. I wanted to experience all the things, all the delicious physical world things. And I did. It led me to poetry, because, now I've got all this stuff I need to say. I got really deeply into poetry. I was trying to express this tension that I feel between this middle world illusion, especially the one that I was being fed by my family and the world around me, my community in Taylor, South Carolina, and the southern, in the evangelical church. And in the spiritual truth that I knew, like I was a kid that I remembered my past life when I was a kid, and that had always impacted me. How does that fit in with it? Then I've got these clairvoyant things that go on, and I have all these things that don't fit their paradigm, and some real gender confusion too, because in my past life I was a man, and I remember being a man. And when you're a young kid, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm, so I don't know. It was such a struggle there at first to figure it all out. And then by the time I was 18, I finally found out that Wicca existed. I discovered it weirdly, that neo-paganism existed. And I had studied a lot of history and anthropology. I like those subjects. And I had done a lot. I loved historical fiction, and I had read Myths of Avalon, and those kinds of all the Arthurian things. I love that stuff. And in my heart, I'm like, oh, that feels real. That feels right. Reincarnation feels right. A goddess and a god together feel right. A sacredness of nature feels right. But oh, woe is me. Those things are dead and gone. They never existed. That's fantasy. Witches don't exist, And then I met a Wiccan in the wild, a priest, and nicest guy who clued me in that this was real. And I felt like someone had pried the rock under which I had been raised up in the sunshine poured in. And then that was it. So from 18 on, I discovered that this thing existed already. And I immediately identified with it, that is coming home. That is who I've always been, That's the only right thing for me. And I just started studying from there. And then here we are. That was 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think we must be about the same age, because I was thinking, that sounds very
that was
similar.
1992 for me. I turned 18 in 92. I just turned 48. This is my 30th year of the witching.
Yeah, I turned 18 in 1990, so a couple years ahead of you. But very similar kind of. It
was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, my family, I grew up in a very different dynamic. My parents weren't churchgoers, and I kind of pushed them into it because I was just trying to find what it was. And in the context I was in, it had to be some kind of church. So I went to Methodist church, went to Southern Baptist church, went to a Lutheran church, my dad had grown up with, and he got real excited about that. And then, it's like, these aren't working. This isn't it. What's going on? Like, something's missing here. And kind of I think my introduction was more New Age. And then I kind of got introduced to witches and Wiccans in college. So it was, it's like, oh yeah, there's other stuff out there.
Oh yeah, we all have to take our turn through the New Age stuff. Yeah. I had a friend who was into sort of the New Agey Christian stuff. What do you call that? Like science of mind or whatever that stuff is. I don't know what they were into, but they took me to some Unity church or something, and I got some nice New Agey stuff, and that felt really good for a little while. And then when we added I need the earth-centered religion. I need the earth-centered spirituality. That feels so right to me. And what was coming up in the 90s, that's just the norm. I mean, I loved it. I still love it to a degree, though I would say that I've gotten more sophisticated in my understanding and approach to it in the last 30 years. I still love the old symbolism and the old, sort of simple metaphors. I know some people do not like that very much anymore, but I don't have any problem with it. I love it still.
Yeah, I don't know. I always kind of compare it to, like, when you first hear a song and that's kind of imprinted on you, and then someone covers it later and they may do a better job, but you heard it by this other person first, and that's going to be your favorite in a way, even though you can appreciate the new stuff, that you still like, oh no, that was the first thing. It's almost first love, I guess, in a way too. So
it is. It's kind of like a first love. Yep.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it sounds like writing the book, like, I don't know, rehash is not the word I want to say, but, kind of, it sounds like writing this book really is like really your journey through all of this too. So what was, I mean, like, emotionally, I have to imagine that was a lot to do this.
Yeah, it was difficult. And at the same time, there were a lot of difficult things going on in my personal life.
And a pandemic, let's just throw a worldwide pandemic in there on top of it.
Like, for example, I owed my editor a draft. I believe our due date was March 21st or March 31st, something like that. And that's the March that we all shut down. But all the months leading up to that, there had been a lot of upheaval, and there was a family need. I needed to be helping some difficult things in my family, which had pulled me away and distracted me. And let's just say if I had turned in whatever I was about to turn in, it would have been crap. And they would have just been like, you still don't know what this book is about. And they'd have been right, because I was I was distracted. And then everything goes haywire, and they shut the world down. And now I've got to figure out how to keep my business afloat and keep my employees fed. Like when you've got a staff and they depend on you being open to live, and then you're closed because the state says everyone's closed. It's a panic situation. So, I was diverted there. But I did ask for an extension, which they were very great, very nice to do. And I'm home now. And all the things that had previously been distracting me, not the family things, but the work things and the teaching, because, we're not getting together on Thursday nights for our regular weekly class anymore. We can't even be in the same building with each other. So anyway, I am the worst about using, I'm just too busy. I'm so busy to keep me from a creative thing. And I can keep it up here. My processes start up here for so long before they come out on the page. I will have been thinking about something, God, forever before I start writing it. So it was up in my head, and I can make excuses. Anyway, now I'm at home, and I'm very isolated. It ends up being, just me and my two teenagers for a long time. And I made this goal. And it was funny. It's like I needed this personal thing that had been happening to me. I kind of wrapped it all in, and I told myself that if I could get this draft the way I wanted it and turned in by summer solstice, then I could reward myself with the sort of this special trip to resolve this personal thing that had been going on for me. I had to get my heart tied into it. There had to be some real personal consequences, It's like, if I finish this thing, I am allowed to go and resolve this other thing. And I worked my ass off. I mean, I don't know. Then it became this obsessive compulsive thing. OCD runs in my family. And although I've never actually been diagnosed with that, I'm here to tell you, I got some threads of a little obsessive compulsive business going on. And so when I started really working on it, it was like 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6 straight weeks or something like that. And I finally figured out the thesis. I finally figured out what the whole book was about, because I teach intro to witchcraft all year, right? But there had to be something bigger, a bigger purpose than just, here's how you do these things. Step 1, step 2, step 3, right? I finally figured it out. And then once I figured it out, it was just going back and going from the beginning and adding the connective tissue, the thread that flows through the whole thing, the purpose, the greater purpose. And that was that cooperative culture thing, that we can create a better world in which we are all happy and fulfilled and effective. Anyway, and once I got that done and I submitted that on that summer solstice, I basically just collapsed in a puddle. And then for a few days, and then I picked myself up and I went and pursued, the personal things I needed to do. I went to the beach. I did some other things, and we ended up doing one more draft. Just I got the notes back after that. A few weeks later, by the end of August, I got some notes back that were basically things like just reformatting some stuff. It was word processing, really.
Right, yeah.
And then a little bit more of the smoothing out of things. And they said, here's the thing that's funny. So I hyper communicate, right? I have never been short of words. I have never been succinct. I have never been struck with brevity. So they came back and they said, okay, we need you to fill in this gap and explain this more and a little more here and a little more here and a little more here. But we need you to cut this, because you're going on too far. And we need you to cut 30,000 words. Ooh. And so I know, how do you do that? So I added the things they said add. I deleted the things they said delete. I went through and cut every spare word I could think to cut. And I had added 30,000 words instead of the draft.
Like,
and I finally, right? I don't know how to write a shorter book. I mean, they did not set out to publish this giant chunk of a book. Nobody did. They wanted me to write like 80,000 words. first time book. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is what you asked for. This is what I can do. This is what I proposed. I don't know how to do it any shorter than this. I tried. And then I said, so you need to tell me what thread to pull, and then I'll have to do one more draft, and I'll have to pull that thread from the whole book. And I sent that off at the way too large. And a couple of weeks later, I got my cover. They sent me, oh, here's the cover from the art department. What do you think? And I'm like, oh my God, we're already at cover? How did we get to cover? I thought I was doing another draft. And I wrote my editor back and I said, I was expecting more notes and that we'd have to go through and cut something. And she goes, oh no, I sent it to production weeks ago. It's done.
Nice.
I was like, ah.
Well, I mean, it was the book. It was clearly the book it was supposed to be.
That's what she said. She said the rest of it just needs to be sliced and diced and copy editing, a word here, a paragraph there. And so that's what we did. But they basically just accepted the book in its form, the long form that it is. And I'm very grateful to them for taking that risk with me.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was very good of them to invest in that with me as a first-time writer. I'm very grateful.
Yeah. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about the beginning about the kind of anticlimactic, the book is out in the world. So what was that like for you? I mean, especially to release kind of in that period where we thought things were going to be okay and then they weren't again. What was that like?
Well, for one thing, supply chain issues, the paper and cardboard, there's interruptions to publishing right now because of just material. Supply chain blockages. Anyway, so the book was supposed to come out December 8th. They did not get the paper in time or something. I don't know exactly what happened, but it ended up pushing the production and release back a week or two. I think officially it's now January 8th because they just do it in month chunks. But anyway, I had planned all of these release party things where we were actually going to attempt to get people together in person for the first time in years. We had not done anything since March of 2020. And now it's just December of 21. And but we managed to do it. We had a little party out at the Oak Grove Retreat, which is nearby to us. And my partner is the creative director there and artist in residence there. So they let us throw this party and he played music and we had food and, I gave a talk and it was a big time. But it barely happened. So again, my publicist at Llewellyn, Marks Ironwood, he's amazing. He overnighted 3 cases of books to me to try to get them there in time for the book signing, which is great. And then, I don't know, it was a whole lot of doing this kind of podcast interview. I thought I might put together a book tour. That I didn't do anything like that because there aren't very many people doing things like that. But, I was in the second printing within 2 weeks. The pre-orders had been so big that they called for a second printing 2 weeks later. So I felt like that was a success, but you expect all this feedback, Yeah. And I mean, I looked at some of my friends' books on Amazon, they're listing on Amazon. And as much as I hate it, the algorithm that's necessary for authors is that there's lots of reviews on Amazon. So much opens up for us if lots of people have responded on that one platform. And I'm expecting there to be comments and reviews and whatever. And here we are 8 months after release, and I only have 11 reviews on Amazon, 42 total, with the stars. I expected all this vitriol to come at me because of my including, the principle of polarity and that kind of thing and talking about gender. Oh, I expected people to be all upset that I'm woke or something because I've seen those comments on other people's books. And I get none of that. And I'm like, I guess I expected more feedback than I've gotten. What I do get is all 5 stars. Usually, that's lovely. Those are my friends, people I know. I would love it if a whole bunch of strangers who've read my book actually got on Amazon and said what they really thought. I would love it one way or the other.
Yeah, it is weird. It is a little bit And it was kind of what you talked about earlier about, like, as an artist, you put things out there hoping it'll find an audience and then you'll connect with the person. And then sometimes it's like screaming into the void.
Like, screaming into the void. I felt like I was screaming into the void. We'll see. I mean, I do hear that a lot of them are selling a bit from various bookstores. I mean, I have a bookstore and I am obviously I've sold a bunch, but that's not really a good indicator.
Yeah. So like, oh, it's your book. I should buy this. Speaking of which, I saw on the website, and I wanted to ask you about this. The elemental kits.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I just thought it was a fascinating, kind of in a weird marketing space. Is like, you think about book merch, but I was like, this is a different way to talk about that.
Yeah, I'm very happy about it. I'm very excited about what we've got going on. So I have a bookstore, obviously, and a metaphysical store with all the metaphysical stuff that we go to great lengths to procure, to get in stock, to make sure we're getting the best things, things that are responsibly made and culturally respectful and, not going to destroy the planet because it's made out of some nasty material and, mislabeled or something. Anyway, with supply chain issues, it's hard to get all that stuff. And in the book, I've listed all the materials you need for all of the rites and the spells. There's a lot of rites and spells in there, very detailed, and in there, I tried to talk about getting things locally and things that are inexpensive, things that are sustainably derived. I make a big push for beeswax candles, for example. And then, anyway, so I thought, well, it's hard to get these things. If you live in my town, you can just come shop for me, but not every town has a shop like that. And a lot of people are having to buy online. And while I do want people to buy things from their local metaphysical stores, like I would love it if they took my book to their metaphysical store and said, hey, can you get me these things or whatever, and let them procure them. But for people who don't have that option, they're going to order it online anyway. I might as well be where they get it from, right? And so what we wanted to provide was the best things in a nice little format, which is exactly what you need, not too much, not too little, but to get you started in a witchcraft practice that has the most effective way of doing things. So I turned that over to my general manager. Her name is Courtney Varnado. She's an amazing witch. I'd say she's a green witch, herbalist, apothecary, priestess person who takes her job at making sure that we're stocked with responsible things that will not harm the earth. She takes that very seriously. And I put her on the project, and she does such a beautiful job. Just beautiful. Her aesthetic is beautiful. So she put them all together for me. And so basically what it is, it's not a subscription box service because you don't have to commit to anything, but it is, we call them provision boxes, witchcraft provision boxes. And for each chunk of the book where you need stuff. So the first one is a dedication box, and it's the things you would need to create the dedication ritual to the great work. And then with each elemental chapter, there are, you'll craft a candle, you'll charge and decorate and load a candle for that work. You'll then do a rite where you use all the incense, the candle, the oil, the anointing oil that you created in the material formulary on one moon night. You'll then use for the ritual to key into that realm and go make those connections. And then later on, you'll use the same things and your connections for spell work to help balance that aspect of yourself. So with Earth, for example, I call that the path of sovereignty. What do I need to do to help strengthen my personal sovereignty and my personal health, physical health, so that I can be the most strong, effective person that I can be? And then with Air box, it would be my mental health, and with Water box, my emotional health, etc. And so anyway, each box has what you need for the formulary and the ritual. And there are extra special things that go with the spells that, are up to each person to find on their own, among, in their environment, for example. Yeah. But the main things that you would need from a store, we have in the box. And they are available on our website, which is thesojo.com, thesojo.com. They're lovingly created and wrapped and put together. And they include, in the book, there's my artwork that I call candle wraps. And it's basically just a square with a bunch of imagery on it that invokes that elemental energy and the planetary magic and the hermetic sort of, gnomes and sylphs and undine and salamander. Also Wiccan tools and the mystery teachings of each element. That's all on this piece of paper, this image that if you wrap it around a sanctuary candle, it becomes like 3 aspects of that energy that you can work with just by turning your candle around. Mm-hmm. And we created those in color stickers. So you can just put them on your candle jar.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, I thought it was such a brilliant idea.
It's so simple. So I actually got the idea from Laura Tempest Zakroff. She puts her art in stickers to put on candles sometimes. I asked her about her process of getting those made, and she was very generous in sharing that with me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So before we get to our game of chance at the end, would you like to talk about some upcoming stuff? What's coming up for you, what you're working on, and where people can connect with you in addition to the store, maybe?
Sure. Well, I've got a contract to headline the autumn meet of the Phoenix Festivals in Bell, Florida in October. And I'll be teaching some workshops and leading a ritual based on the book there. I've submitted to some things for next year. Hopefully I'll do, Mystic South and that kind of thing again in the next year, aiming maybe even towards Paganicon up north in March. We've had a lot of people ask us for in-person training. And so we have a relationship with the good people out at the Oak Grove Retreat Center, which is sort of, it's kind of a new age hippie, earth-based sort of retreat center nearby in Tarboro, North Carolina. And so we're putting together a retreat series that will go along with the book starting this year. And that is a campground. You can do camping there. They've got Airbnbs, that kind of thing. So I know all of our local people have been asking for it, but they're not really able to do the weekly thing like we used to. So we're going to do quarterly intensives, weekend long retreats, where mostly we do things on Saturdays, but, including some Friday night and Sunday morning so people can come camp at a beautiful place. And I believe we're looking at the first, like October 7th, 8th, 9th as the first weekend where we're going to do basically a really quick run through of sections 1 and 2 for the foundations and the understanding how to prepare for the year and the dedication rite. And then after that, we're going to meet according to moon cycles, but closer to the equinoxes and solstices, the lesser Sabbats. We're going to get together for weekend retreats, but we're looking for, when the moon is in an earth sign to do earth, and when the moon is in an air sign to do air, that kind of thing. So we're looking for the good astrological juicy go and flow that happens to land on a weekend pretty close to an equinox or solstice. So we're going to do the whole year in a day over a 1.5 year period quarterly. And we're working on that schedule now. We'll be announcing all that on our websites and various blogs and things as soon as we get the details nailed down, which should be about 2 weeks. But in the meantime, I can be found at my website, heronmichelle.com, or on my blog for Patheos Pagan, which is witchonfire.net. And my store, which sells all these lovely things, and also there's communication through the store website. That is thesojo.com.
Great. Sounds good. All right. Well, I am going to roll a die to get our topic of things we're not supposed to talk about in polite company. And since we were both raised in the South, I know you know what those are.
Right. Indeed.
So death, sex, religion, politics, or money, depending on what number. And if I roll a 6, you get to pick which one you want. So,
okay.
Let's see what it has to say. 3, religion. Yeah, we definitely talked about this a little bit already.
Talk about religion all day.
Yeah. So what do you think the difference between a practice and a religion is? And how do you see your own path in regards to those definitions?
Well, I have always approached my practice and witchcraft in general and Wicca in specific as a religion because it serves the same purpose as a religion. I know that magic, the craft itself, can be performed by anyone, including atheists. It doesn't matter. But what I do, it does serve the purpose, the same, it has the same effect in my life as a religion, in that it provides for me a paradigm or a worldview so that I understand myself within the greater cosmos. It provides for me an explanation of what happens after death, what my relationship to divinity should be. It provides to me an idea of ethics and how one should behave, what the point of life is. I mean, if you look at Webster's dictionary definition of what are the characteristics of a religion, those are the points they give.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because I come at this from Hermetics. Now, mind you, Hermeticism in ancient Alexandria was intended to be a natural religion. That's what they meant for it to be. And so, it provides that for me. I used to feel very shy about the word religion because my mother's church had tainted that for me. It took me 10 years to throw off all the biases I had against it. And I don't really want to be ever seen as some sort of weird religious whack job, kooky person. I'm not a very religious person. We were talking about discipline in writing. I don't even have a particularly disciplined practice because so much of it just happens between my soul and the soul of the cosmos and the spirits around me. It's just like a personal conversation. But I do think the framework that it provides, especially in the beginning of the moon and the seasons and the sun and how we celebrate with our family and our friends and a coven and the community. I don't know. I think what that provides is as important as the community fellowship hall potluck on Wednesday evening that the Southern Baptist Church has.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Community, rites of passage. I love all that. So it's not a dirty word to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's kind of very similar to kind of where I've landed with it, is that, I think in some ways it is largely a practice, but it is a practice that, like you said, feeds those like spiritual needs in a person. So therefore that is a religious practice, right? And, I think in a culture that's having a conversation about who gets to make decisions about what happens, mm-hmm. referring to religion means something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, the conversations being happened in our modern culture about that scares me. I really don't want certain voices to win that debate and get to start calling the shots for us. Yeah. Scares me to death.
Yeah.
Which means that I guess other religious people, other forms of religious people like Wiccan priestesses or whatnot, we need to stand up and be just as loud, I guess. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming, or there will be some assumption that there are no other religious voices and therefore we forfeit our voice in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not really the job description I want, but
I don't want that. Yeah, I don't want that job either, but I agree with you. And I think, we kind of have to at least be open about it. I mean, I do think it is a time for people of minority religions in general to go, no, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. This is not what we signed up for. This violates our rights to do it this way.
This is un-American, what you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I firmly believe in a separation of church and state.
That's my favorite part of the whole thing, the whole Constitution, the whole Bill of Rights, separation of church and state. Yeah. That is the most sacred thing.
Right. And I do think there is this weird, like, if those very loud voices aren't the ones that get to make the decision, and they think somehow if they don't get to, then we get to, and then they have to all be witches. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
No, that's not how this works.
We're not asking you to come over and be heathens and pagans. Like that's not what we're asking you. Like we don't really proselytize.
No, we do not. As a matter of fact, if there is a one thou shalt not, isn't it thou shalt not proselytize?
Yeah,
among the pagans and the witches. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an interesting time. And I always think about, that curse, may you live in interesting times. And I get it now more than I did before. But yeah,
I get it too.
I agree with you, I think.
Well, the other interesting thing about my backstory, of course, is that I grew up 4th through 6th grade. I lived in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, and that's 30 minutes away from Mecca. And so I have a very strong opinion about the separation of church and state. I have a very strong dislike of theocracies, because, you live in one where there's a state religion. And if you are not that religion, you are subject to bad things happening to you. And if you practice your other religion, you can be exported. You can be deported, without warning.
Yeah.
It's terrifying to live in that kind of a world where there's a religious theocracy in power. And until you've experienced it firsthand, you just don't understand how dangerous it is. You really don't want any one particular viewpoint on that to be in charge.
No. And even if you're the person in charge, you might not always be.
Right. God knows. If I was suddenly in some sort of political leadership role, I would keep my religion out of it.
Yeah.
The way any good leader does, they're like, no, I can be this one religion and not impose it on you. I would certainly be that person.
Yeah.
Because I know I don't want anybody to impose especially these politicians that are trying to get their religious views imposed. I find them just vile. And so I don't want that imposed on me.
Yeah. Well, and part of the time, I think the other thing that's come up for me in watching this kind of play out is like, I don't know that they actually even believe that.
Yeah.
I think that, I will not say I don't think that those kind of Christians aren't real Christians. If that's what you call yourself, that's what you are. But I do think that they don't believe those things. They believe that's what will get them elected and that's what will keep them in power.
Agreed.
And that's kind of scarier to me, honestly.
Absolutely. It's just manipulative.
Yeah. Yeah. But I want to end on a positive note.
Let's end on a positive note.
So I think, one of the things I think about that is like, even though it is a scary time, like when people ask you, you still live in the South, so you probably occasionally get that question, like, what church do you go to? Like, how do you respond to people? Like, what do you feel like is a way that, like, in the current moment is a way to be true to yourself, but also maybe not put your neck out there if the timing is not good to do that?
That's a good question. Well, if someone comes to my door knocking, which happens a lot, actually, oh, are you interested in joining our church? And I'm like, well, I am clergy and I have my own church. So no, thank you. I am so very busy. I am not visiting other churches. Oh yeah. What's your church? And if they really want to know and it gets into it, I'll tell them, it's earth-based spirituality, that honors a goddess and a god, that kind of thing. And I'll use I might not come out full force with the word witch until I know that we can handle it, until we've covered some other things first. But I have that conversation pretty regularly, but it's been a while because I am so public. Because I own the store, because I've been a blog. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm the village witch, whether I like it or not. People know that about me. And most of the time it does me no harm. It does upset me to think that it might have ever caused maybe some social difficulty for my children, among like their friends' parents or whatever. Yeah. I hope not, but I don't flaunt it. I don't look outwardly very witchy most of the time. There's not a giant sign in my front yard. Well, there is. There's a sign that, that whole science is real. Black Lives Matter. That sign. Yeah. That sign's in my front yard.
That's not unique to witches.
That's not unique to witches. But anyway, I really do try to just present myself as a reasonable, respectable, good citizen, good parent, good neighbor. And I do tell people who and what I am when in a way that I feel like they can receive at the time, and I will adapt the language. Like just today, someone said, "Oh, what was your book about?" And I said, it was kind of a textbook, a guide to living a magical life. But I'll leave out the big scary words until maybe we can talk more in the future.
No, I think that's a good way to do it. That's respectful to both you and the person asking. You may not really want the answer to that question that they think they're asking. So.
Right. Yeah. It's a tricky dance. I don't hide it, but I neither do I want to cause harm or to myself and the movement by representing it poorly. And I think sometimes it just takes time to broach these subjects in a way, meet people where they're at. Because I speak the language of the local religion, I can pretty easily couch things in terms that I think people will understand, and we can find common ground on that. I try to find common ground with people. I'm not trying to be some shock and awe witch. I just don't. It's not necessary to me.
Yeah.
I like to blend in the crowd, I guess, a little bit. I'm not trying to get burned at any stakes.
No, let's definitely not do that. No, that sounds great. Well, Heron Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been a wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed your book, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 installments, it sounds like, that we're going to get.
Yeah. Lunar Witchcraft I'm working on now. It's about 3/4 of the way done. And great. Solar Witchcraft, for the Sabbats will be after that. But, my son, who's 17 and says he's an atheist and really into science and math, he goes, Mom, Penta means 5. And I don't think you can get away with this without writing 5 volumes in the series. And I was like, true story, son, true story. So who knows
what
next? Llewellyn will let me do, but I would certainly love to make it a 5-volume set. And then I'll just go lay down and die somewhere and disappear into the woods and get a cottage on the edge of some Colorado forest and disappear and be happy.
I like it. I like swamp witch goals or mountain witch goals. Those work.
Mine's a mountain witch goal. I'll be out there with the moose.
Yeah, sounds perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much. And when the next book comes out, come back and chat with us again. Sounds perfect.
I would love to, Victoria. This has been very awesome. Thank you for a wonderful conversation.
WitchLit is a production of Thousand Volt Press and is edited by Kaifel Agostini. Our music is Voices by Alexander Shenekar. You can support our work at ko-fi.com/witchlitpodcast. And if you'd like to submit your own death, sex, religion, politics, or money questions, or have questions or comments about the show, you can send an email to victoria@witchlitpod.com. And please be sure to let us know if we can use your name on the show. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter @witchlitpod. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and consider giving us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It helps other witches find the show. Thanks for listening and for reading witchy.